What simple scientific fact would baffle someone born 1,000 years ago? Story 1 germ theory would be crazy. Populations would spike if they heated it and began to fully cook foods, strain and boil water, wash hands and surfaces, and quarantine the infirmed elsewhere while staff shield their bodies. Supposedly, they thought Black Death was caused by bad smells. People, sick or not, holed up in their house. No wonder a ton died, and I suspect the idea of things so small being the cause of everyone dying would not go over well. The doctor that encouraged everyone to wash their hands in the 1800s was labeled as a crazy person whose goal was to shame the professional doctors by hinting that they were dirty. He kept on explaining that it wasn't a good idea to amputate someone's leg and move on to the next surgery without washing your hands first. Hand-washing guy was labeled as a mentally unstable person, placed in an insane asylum, and took his life as a result. Story 2. It doesn't have to be 1,000 years ago? My other half works with a girl who thinks Earth has multiple suns because when she's driving, one minute the sun is to the right of her and the next minute the sun is to the left. She also stated that England has cold suns and Spain has hot suns. It gets better. My other half, who has a bit of a reputation for being a piss taker, tried to explain how it actually works by starting with, "You know how the Earth is spinning?" She thought he was joking and told him to F off. She has a child. Story 3. Injecting yourself with venom over time makes you immune to it. They knew this. One of my favorite people from antiquity was named Mithridates. He's often referred to as the Poison King. He was the king of Pontus and controlled land in modern-day Turkey, Anatolia, and around the Black Sea during the times of Sulla and Pompey the Great. He died in 63 BC. He is considered by some to be the first toxicologist. After his father was murdered by poison, he began taking small doses of to build his immunity. It was believed he also took small doses of arsenic, which was a popular poison of the day. There is evidence that he created a universal antidote that he would drink routinely to build his immunity. Before he became king, he traveled through Anatolia, taking notes on poisonous plants and animals, collecting samples, speaking with local shamans and healers to learn about the local hazardous materials. The region happens to be rich in poisonous materials. There's Roman writing that there were doctors who claimed to have the recipe for Mithridates' antidote. Whether this is true or not is up for debate, but we have enough surviving writing from antiquity that shows they at least understood the concept of boosted immunity to poisons via exposure to them. Story 4. Quartz has no healing properties. Copper actually kind of does, same with silver. Tomatoes are not poisonous, lead pipes and plates will very much end you. Your doctors are frauds. Your medicine is a combination of hard drugs and leeches and are more likely to kill you than whatever disease. If you are sick, you are not possessed, and you don't need to exorcise them. Which is not saying a prayer and dowsing with holy water, by the way. It's torturing a person to the brink of death to make their body uninhabitable to demons, often involving amateur lobotomy via hand drill. Story 5. Using a strange symbolic magic, algebra, and careful measurements, you can make the symbols tell you the future. You can do it with simple problems, of course. When will the next eclipse happen? Where will Mars appear in the sky in 3 months? But you can also have the symbols start to answer really strange, seemingly unrelated questions. For example, can you write an equation for how far a trebuchet rock will fly, given the starting angle and speed it's thrown from? Now, using just this set of symbols, you can ask it what angle you need to aim to get the maximum distance. A fact Tartaglia used to greatly impress the military in the early 1500s. Their independent experiments proved him right. Story 6. You know, smallpox, which is ending a crapload of people? Yeah, we found a way to put a tiny bit of it into your arm so you won't ever get it. And we've done it so many times that this disease that's killing your kids no longer exists and will never exist again. We even have these for measles, mumps, flu, and cancer. Yes, some people refuse to do it because they're idiots, but so many people have these vaccines that these diseases are not only treatable, but preventable. Your children would never get these diseases that hurt you or kill you, and all of the time it takes to become nearly immune to these life-changing diseases is 5 minutes. Also, maybe your mothers and babies wouldn't die so much. Use soap and water on your damn hands when you're delivering them. Just a thought. Story 7. You have within yourself all the power you need to understand and explain a lot about the world around you. All that you need to do is build logically consistent models. You will be able to harness the power of the sun, grow hardy crops, live longer lives, travel further than the eyes can see, and conquer your adversary. You just need to learn how to develop and evaluate these things called hypotheses. If they were interested, I could probably expand on it. The basic premise of logic is that a consistent model cannot result in contradictory observations. Everything that you can observe in the natural world, even things that seem wildly mysterious or supernatural, can be explained using logically consistent models. If anyone makes any claims about the world, they must do so by stating explicitly what their theory is. and they must also point to some novel predictions that their new theory makes. You must assume that there are no perfect models. You must instead work hard to prepare very careful observation mechanisms to find problems and limitations of your theories. Given competing theories that appear correct, you should use the simplest theory available. Story 8. The Earth is round. It rotates around the sun. The moon is really a big ball in space, but not as big as our Earth. Space is an area of nothing, not even air, which, by the way, is pressing down on you from all directions with a pressure of 15 pounds per square inch. And we measure inches using a ruler, which is a piece of wood that we carve using a metal circle spinning really fast. And if you go really fast, time slows down. And there are these things called black holes in space that are literally a single point of unimaginable density. How compact something. And speaking of compact things, we have things called phones, and they are the size of a rock, and they have a rectangle that emits light in certain patterns to create images. And I really should take my ADHD medication now. Story 9. That World War I happened only 100 years ago. And that time there were 4 different Germanys. The European map was completely disassembled. Russia climbed to the top of the world and then also slowly receded back. Civil rights for minorities in America. Women got the vote. China was fractured and slowly reassembled again twice. Numerous former colonial territories have achieved independence and in some cases outperformed their former masters. It's just astonishing to me that rock and roll can exist in the same century as the Battle of the Marne. Story 10. Gravity affects the rate that time passes. I first read this in Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. Time moves slower the closer you are to the center of a gravity source. Example. Time moves slower at ground level than it does on the peak of Mount Everest. Unnoticeable to the human eye, but the fact that this exists blows my mind. The even crazier thing is that motion has the same effect. The simple fact that I am moving and you are not means that we perceive time slightly differently. It's mind-blowing. Story 11. The moon is moving away from the Earth. The moon's orbit, circular path around the Earth, is indeed getting larger at a rate of about 3.8 centimeters per year. The moon's orbit has a radius of 384,000 kilometers. The reason for the increase is that the moon causes tides on the Earth. Because the side of the Earth that faces the moon is closer, it feels a stronger pull of gravity than the center of the Earth. Similarly, the part of the Earth facing away from the moon feels less gravity than the center of the Earth. This effect stretches the Earth a bit, making it a little bit oblong. It is expected that in 15 billion years, the orbit will stabilize at 1.6 times its present size, and the Earth day will be 55 days long, equal to the time it will take the moon to orbit the Earth. Story 12. Quantum entanglement. I can understand the equations that show its ability to exist, but damn, it is baffling on a let's think about this level. Someone posted a fairly good analogy of this a few days ago on Reddit. Think about having 2 marbles, one red and one blue. They both get sealed inside separate envelopes so that there is no way without opening the envelopes to know which marble is inside which envelope. Now you don't know which marble is which, and you give one of the envelopes to your friend. You both go your separate ways. Later you open your envelope to discover you have the red marble. Therefore, your friend has the blue marble. Your friend's marble was always blue. And looking at your red marble didn't make you friend's marble to change colors. It was just that the only possibility, given that you have the red marble, is that your friend's marble is blue. By simply looking at your red marble, you know the color of your friend's marble with no communication between you two. That is what quantum entanglement is basically saying. Story 13. You ought to know that all objects with mass are attracted to all other objects with mass. It's not a matter of less mass to more mass. It's all mass to all other mass. Anyway, I've often found the Heisenberg uncertainty principle confusing. I get that it's not a matter of our equipment not being good enough and that it's actually physically impossible to measure both the position and momentum precisely. But don't particles still actually have a specific position and momentum? Apparently, they actually don't. My understanding is a little deeper than that, but I'll just post for now. Story 14. Bacteria and rocks can't comprehend the atoms and subatomic structures they're made of. They lack the cognitive and sensory faculty to ever be aware of these, despite how much they are affected. Humans can understand physics, evolution, and atoms to some extent, but like some other dude on here was saying, scale-wise, a subatomic particle is to a speck of dust, as a speck of dust is, scale-wise, to the Earth. And then the universe keeps getting bigger and possibly even smaller beyond that. I don't think there's any reason not to suspect or at least imagine that we're the sensory and intellectual equivalent of a rock or a bacteria in the grand scale of the universe. But if this is the case, we'd never be aware of it since things that are beyond our perception senses are irrevocably beyond our comprehension, most likely inconceivable to our little monkey. Science gives us answers to the world we live in, but it can never have all the answers because it is limited by us. Story 15. Bell's theory of non-locality without a shadow of a doubt predicts a breakdown of locality, the principle which states that An object is influenced directly only by its immediate surroundings. According to the theory, measuring a particle in a measuring device at one location would collapse its wave function and would then instantaneously affect a second particle arbitrarily far away. Remember that the wave function of any particle is a superposition of several different possible eigenstates, which are reduced to a single one of those states after interaction with an observer. This is a central principle of quantum mechanics. The theory that a second particle is affected instantaneously just because the first one is observed means that the interaction occurs faster than the speed of light. Einstein himself refused to believe this theory, which he referred to as spooky action at a distance. There is recent scientific evidence that supports this theory, which completely blows my mind, as does a lot of quantum theory. Story 16. The theory that the Big Bang was really the end of the universe before ours. In other words, their big crunch. See, when our universe began, it was tiny, but over time began to expand. It hit a peak at one point and is now contracting. Scientists theorize that our universe is going to implode in on itself, then explode. So basically, it goes like this: big crunch. Then immediately, the Big Bang, expansion, peak, contraction, big crunch, and it cycles like that every 30 billion years or so. That's all fine and dandy, but every cycle has a beginning. What started the Big Bang, Big Crunch cycle, and what existed before it began? It makes my head hurt just thinking about it, but I find it very fascinating. Story 17. So apparently there are tons of black holes in our universe, but obviously we can't really see them. Yes, I know they're not 100% invisible, and I think I remember in my science class that we can see them by the space they wrap around them. I may be remembering. This isn't really a baffling thing, but imagine if a black hole found its way into our galaxy and eventually to our solar system. Like, what would happen? Would our world get sucked into the thing that eats light for breakfast faster than we could slap a pair of cards in the Egyptian rat screw? Imagine if it happened in the matter of, say, 20 seconds or half of a minute, which is probably a long time for it to happen. I wonder what it would look like from our view. Or like a movie scene if a scientist just saw our planets disappearing. Now I'm just running off into my imagination. But I mean, that'd be crazy. It definitely seems possible, which is scary. Story 18. Simply time, just in general, time. Time is one of the most confusing things possible. The more you try to understand it, the more difficult it becomes. Such as, for example, time travel. If you go back in the past, then does that mean that you follow you every second because you still exist in the past? Until you were born, but then you also exist with yourself in that same exact time. This was also seen in Futurama with Lars and Fry. You are existing while another, but the exact same you. Yeah, wrap your mind around that for a little while. Or let me blow your mind. Again with time travel, but this time going into the far future. You have already died, but yet you still live and exist because even though you yourself are traveling into the future, one of you from the present or past has died, and another you is going into the future, and you are still alive. So while you are dead, you are alive and still exist. Story 19. The deadliest animal in the world in terms of size-body mass ratio. The box jellyfish. It's the size of your thumbnail, but it has the world's deadliest venom. About 20 minutes, you start to vomit profusely. Your muscles begin to spasm uncontrollably. Your skin begins to creep. It feels like worms are burrowing into your skin or acid is being poured all over. Your heart rate shoots up, and the worst part, IMO, Irukandji syndrome, you begin to feel a sense of impending doom. Apparently, patients have begged their doctors to kill them and have even ended themselves. Crazy crap from the tentacles of a jellyfish the size of your thumb. Story 20. Not necessarily a fact, but a thought I had in biochemistry. Also, I've posted this before. Nearly everything in your body is automated, and there's no thought or decisions done by enzymes or proteins. Stuff bumps into other stuff and is assisted by certain interactions. Things fit together. Some change is induced in what it binds to or transforms it in catalysis, and that just sends a tremendous signal throughout the chain to cause something to happen. At no point does it realize, oh, I need to do this. Just random pockets of amino acid and small molecules fitting together induce these changes. Bacteria don't decide to do stuff. Stuff just happens due to chemistry and physics. I'll get corrected to hell for this, I'm sure, but this is how I view it, and it blows my mind. Story 21. The Romans conquered most of Europe at one point. After they had conquered England, they headed up north to Scotland, but ended up crapping themselves and built a wall, Hadrian's Wall, in Scotland to keep the Scots away. While the Romans had men in their thousands, big broadswords and shields and artillery, the outnumbered and lesser-armed Scots would fight fully nude, with small swords and tiny shields, and chase them all away back down to England. Same goes for the Vikings, except the Vikings did manage to claim a few Scottish islands. Story 22. That we're on the edge of our own galaxy. Literally, Earth is at the outermost edge of the Milky Way, and haven't even come close to exploring the rest of the galaxy. And then to really rattle your brain, There are trillions of other galaxies with hundreds of trillions more planets out there. Seriously, just stop and think about that. And then think about how the universe is ever expanding, how living on Earth and abiding by her laws of time and space, we can't comprehend infinity, and yet to the best of our knowledge, it's what the universe is. There are some in the realm of astronomy and astrophysics that believe that since the universe is so infinitely, massively big, that somewhere in that cosmos has to be Earth, but slightly different in reality from our own. And from that planet billions of light years away is another version of it, with a slightly different reality. And this is never ending. This is where the parallel reality theory comes from. Just think about it for a second. I'm typing on Reddit right now, theorizing about a parallel world to my own, an inconceivable distance from my planet. And on that planet's reality, a version of myself is typing on TDR, theorizing about me. Or at least that's just what I believe about the parallel realities theory. Others have different theories. Everything about space is baffling and so interesting and brain-racking to think about. Story 23, Sun. In 1024, the prevailing belief in many parts of the world, particularly in Europe, was that the Earth was the center of a concept known as geocentrism. This idea was largely based on the teachings of ancient Greek philosophers like Ptolemy. The notion that the Earth is just one of many planets orbiting around the Sun, heliocentrism, which is itself just one star among billions in a vast galaxy, would be completely incomprehensible to someone from that time. The idea challenges the deeply held views of the cosmos, the place of humanity in the universe, and the very structure of reality as they understood it. Story 24. The concept of germs was entirely unknown. People often believed that diseases were caused by miasma, bad air, imbalances of bodily humors, or even supernatural forces. The idea that illnesses like the plague, tuberculosis, or even the common cold are caused by microscopic organisms that can't be seen with the naked eye, and that these organisms can be killed or prevented through hygiene practices and medicine, would be incredibly difficult for someone from that era to grasp. The existence of microscopic life forms would be completely outside their experience and understanding. Story 25. Lightning was often seen as a mysterious and terrifying force, sometimes attributed to the wrath of gods or other supernatural causes. The idea that lightning is a natural electrical discharge that can be understood scientifically, and that the same type of energy can be generated, controlled, and used to power homes, machines, and entire cities, would be astonishing. The concept of electricity itself, let alone its practical application, would be completely foreign and difficult for someone from that time to comprehend. Story 26. The concept of flying in an airplane would be utterly astonishing. In 1024, the idea of human flight was largely confined to myths, legends, and dreams. The thought that humans could build machines made of metal and other materials, weighing thousands of pounds, and use them to soar through the sky at high speeds, traveling vast distances across continents and oceans, would be beyond their wildest imagination. The principles of aerodynamics, engine technology, and the physics that make flight possible would be completely unknown, making the reality of modern aviation an incredible and incomprehensible marvel. Story 27. The idea that you could communicate with someone on the other side of the planet in real time using devices like smartphones or computers via radio waves, microwaves, or other electromagnetic waves would be mind-blowing. In 1024, communication over long distances was slow, relying on messengers or written letters carried by hand, horseback, or ship. The concept of sending your voice, written words, or even images instantly without any physical connection through invisible waves that travel at the speed of light would seem like magic or an impossibility to someone from that time. Story 28. Medical knowledge was rudimentary, with very limited understanding of anatomy and no concept of cells or genetics. The idea that the human body is composed of trillions of microscopic cells, each containing DNA that carries the genetic blueprint of life, would be unimaginable. Even more astonishing would be the knowledge that this DNA determines everything from physical traits to susceptibility to certain diseases, and that scientists can even edit or modify DNA to change characteristics or treat genetic disorders. The entire concept of genetics and cellular biology would be completely foreign and astonishing. Story 29. The moon was often seen as a distant, mystical object, possibly the domain of gods or spirits. The idea that humans not only understand the moon's nature as a rocky body orbiting Earth, but have also built machines that allowed them to travel there, land on its surface, and return safely would be beyond belief. The technology, engineering, and knowledge required for space travel, as well as the notion of exploring other worlds, would be so far removed from their reality that it would likely seem like a fantastical story rather than a scientific achievement.